Daniel Ford, welcome to the Bearded Badass podcast, man. You're a whiskey maker, and I could not wait to get you on this show. How you doing today?
I am doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. I don't have quite as much of a badass beard as what you've got at the moment, but I got to ask you, how long did
Dude,
it take for that to grow?
the stash, though, the stash, dude, I'm loving the stash. The stash looks good. Looks real good. Actually, this right here, um, I started growing it out about 3 years ago, and I let it get down to probably right about here, and then I shaved that all off, and I just had like a beard about this long all the way around. And then I decided to grow it out, and it hasn't been cut since that time. I'm going to say, other than, I think I've had it trimmed like 3 times in the last year and a half.
Nice, nice.
So,
Yeah,
so
I decided I wanted to do something a little different and watched Tombstone one too many times over Thanksgiving 2019 and said, well,
yeah.
Doc Holliday, dentist, I'm a doctor of computer science. I'm going to grow a
Mhm.
Doc Holliday and do something different. And COVID
Hey,
happened,
I'm
and
telling you what, brother,
I decided to stay
you're
home.
making it look good. You're making it look good for sure. Okay, so for
Appreciate
our for the sake of our audience who don't really know you and don't know what it is that you do, why don't you get into a little bit of a history about what got you into? I think it's all started with home brewing, and then what has you to where you are now.
Yeah, so I'm as my doctorate's in computer science. I'm a cybersecurity guy. Been in technology basically my whole life. And when my one of my good friends was him and I were working together at standing up Homeland Security, he would come up to where I lived in Maryland at the time because there was this homebrew store, and he made wine. And I was like, I didn't know anything really about it, so I go with him to the store after playing golf. I see all this stuff there. I'm like, you make your own beer? I'm like, all right, how hard is this? And so, I bought a bunch of books, read on it, found this program called Beersmith to kind of help, and in 2003. So as I kept on doing it, and you can make some really high quality beer on your own. You don't necessarily save a whole lot of money, but it's fun, and you know exactly what's going in there, and you can make the alcohol content pretty much whatever you want. So
Right.
that started to progress, and Kevin, which was my buddy's name, him and I used to joke that, hey, we're gonna get out of this technology business and open. I was going to open a beer place. He's going to open a wine place, and then we would do like a joint restaurant together, and that's what they would serve our beer, his wine. So I didn't
Okay.
quite get to that point. He's still working in the government. I'm not. And then COVID happened. So
Yeah.
I did a project for my MBA that our group went to Constellation Brands. So Constellation Brands owns Corona, Negro Modella, Svedka Vodka, High West Distillery, and a bunch of other things like that. And so I got to work on a project there and got to learn about the business. And I went,
Mm-hmm.
I see all this market data, see the trends of micro distilleries going up, and finally going from the computer background to now the business background. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, all this business training. Wait a minute, market going up, demand
Mm-hmm.
is high, supply is low. So, oh, well, started talking to my wife, and I'm like, hey, the fastest growing market in spirits, specifically whiskey, is women. So we should probably think about doing a distillery. She said go last July, and she probably wasn't prepared for how fast I was going. So there is a little interesting thing that there's this thing called the American Distillers Institute, and like the owner of it says that he will buy lunch for anyone that can get their distillery off the ground in less than 2 years because it's hard. Um, and
Right.
we're finding that out that it's really hard. I mean, we're we signed a lease on a place in October. We found a contractor. One permit issue after another. We're delayed now till May. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but if it was easy, then everyone would be doing it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anything. I have always thought that anytime you want to start a business, you want to start some sort of, it can be business, it can be some sort of foundation that's going to help people in some way, shape, or form, whatever it is. Anything that's truly worth doing, shouldn't be easy. There should be a little bit of a struggle because in my opinion, what winds up happening by going through those struggles is you actually learn some things, not only about what it is that you're trying to do, but you learn things about yourself too. And nowadays people tend to not look inward so much as they do outward, because we live in a world where everything is social media, this and everything's on our phones and all that stuff. So we spend less time reflecting inward and more time just paying attention to everything around us.
Oh, so true. I mean, it's a media gratification world today, and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
nothing is immediate. I mean, you were telling me in the pre-show that one of your personal, one of the other jobs you have is a personal trainer. No one's going from 150 pounds to 200 pounds of muscle and able to bench press 300 pounds overnight. I mean, it's a
No.
lot of progress, a big, huge, long process. Because also, they'll get hurt if they try to
Oh yeah.
go all the way to there.
Yeah.
It's going to fall on them. I mean, it's not going to be fun.
No, not at all.
So
and
I
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's to me, it's the journey is more important, if not equally important to the destination. And in my mind, there is no destination. It's going to just keep on going. Whenever I get to that one goal, it's what's next.
Yes. And that's another thing too. Too many people in business, in their health and fitness and whatnot, they like, okay, I have a goal. And then they do what they have to do and they reach that goal. And then they either kind of just sit back and go on cruise control, or they reach the goal and then they forget some of the things that helped them get to where they were trying to be. And they wind up, actually the progress starts to reverse. I know in my own fitness journey, one of the big things for me was, when I started working out and started learning about nutrition and whatnot, my goal was to reverse my type 2 diabetes. I wanted to be able to live my life without having to take medications. And that day came in mid 2013. But then I was like, okay, well,
Awesome.
I'm one of these people that I'm goal oriented. Okay. I need to have a goal. And I was talking with my doctor and she's like, she said, you're a pretty big guy and you've done well for yourself in the gym and whatnot. She said, you ought to try bodybuilding. Now, mind you, I was in my mid 40s at this point, and I'm like, woman, you got to be out your mind. I got no business, trying to be a bodybuilder. But, and she was like, no, she said, people do this stuff, they do it natural and enhanced, and they do it in their 50s and 60s and 70s. She said, that could be something that you could work towards. So that's my current goal. Sometime I may be 60 by the time it happens, but at some point I'm going to do a bodybuilding competition just so I can push towards that goal, because I know the things that I'm going to have to do to reach that goal are going to do nothing but better me as a person and better my health.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by bodybuilding in general. I'm not a big gym guy. I prefer doing martial arts and things like that. Mainly because
absolutely.
I can see a little bit more of an end product, and it takes some strength to throw people around a mat. Right. But, I was watching an interview with, I think it was Ronnie Coleman, and all the things he had to do in order to get that big and stay that big. I'm like, whew, that's some discipline right there.
Yes. But see, he's paying for it. I mean, he will probably go down in history as one of the strongest bodybuilders of all time. I mean, this man had like a 800 and some pound squat. He would leg press like almost 2,000 pounds. I mean, it was just insane the strength that this guy had. Now, obviously he was enhanced, but genetics still play a part in it. But you look at everything he did over his career, being an 8-time Mr. Olympia. And you look at him now, he's had to have his back fused in several different places. He's had both hips replaced numerous times. And it's weird because it's like he gets done with these surgeries and then you see him 2 months later on Instagram and he's in the gym and he's lifting weights. And granted, he's not lifting anywhere near the volume that he was before, but it's just the fact that, he's still doing it and he's still hurting himself in the process and he's having to go back and have more surgeries done. But that's dedication. That right there is 100%. That man that man eats, breathes, and shits bodybuilding. That's what he does. You know what I'm saying? And I think, me personally, if you want to be successful in anything you do, you have to be incredibly passionate about it. You know, the founder of Mountaineer brand, Mr. Mountaineer, Eric Young, very, very passionate about this business and the products that he puts out. You know, he was like me, Daniel. You know, he started off, he was growing his beard and he was using all these other products that had all these other chemicals and stuff in it. And he's just like, no, there's got to be a better way. So what did he do? He hit the books, started reading different things. And the next thing you know, he started formulating products in his kitchen, went from his kitchen to his garage to what we have now. And that right there, that's dedication to your cause. And that's how you're successful. So now before, because we've taken like a huge detour here and I want to get back on track because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about. So, all right. So you basically started off playing around with beer first and then went to whiskey. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What does it take? What does it take? What is the process and what does it take to make a good quality whiskey?
Absolutely. So, the really interesting part is that, beer is really just beer and wine. I mean, that's basically the two, if you want to break out the categories, and from there, everything comes from it. So from beer, the same ingredients that you would make a good beer with, minus the hops. I mean, that's the big key. You don't put hops in vodka, gin, rum, whiskey, but you can make any of these spirits from those same products, whether it be wheat, whether it be barley, corn, rice, you name it. Now, for me, we've got, here at Dragon's Mouth, we're making rum from sugarcane, and then we're making whiskey from barley. So it'll be 25% smoked barley, and then the rest 75% regular barley. And then from there, the first part that comes off the still is basically going to wind up being vodka. But it all starts off with either beer or wine. From wine, you get cognac, you get brandy, you get some things of that nature, but it starts with grapes of some type. You can fruit, we should say. So what makes it? Well, as with just about anything, high quality ingredients. What you put into it is what you're going to get out. If you put in garbage, you're going to get garbage. So then the next comes, your taste buds. The big reason why my wife is the, so to speak, we'll say master distiller in this case, even though I may be doing a lot of the distilling, it's her tasting it. And the reason why she's tasting it is women have more taste buds than men. Men will tend to gravitate towards what I would call a bitier whiskey, mainly because we can feel it. And we're like, oh, okay, now we've got something. Well, and I'm only assuming from evolutionary standpoint that women grew these taste buds because of having children. They needed to make sure what they were going to be eating was going to be safe. So they've got all these taste buds. Now, so there's that part. Then so you're cutting it. So you'll start with all this liquid coming off the still. And the first part of it is with they could call it different things, but you've got this first part that is not good for you. And when you hear these old wives' tales of people going blind, things like that, that's literally the first several ounces coming off the still. I think my numbers are right. It's about every 5 ounces for every I think it's 5 gallons. So 5 ounces of 5 gallons you throw away. So if you're doing 100 gallons, 5 times whatever, 20. So you'll throw that first part away because it's bad for you. Then you've got what's called the heads. So the heads are going to be high alcohol content, and not necessarily what you want to use for whiskey. That you might save for something later to basically make sure your product stays consistent. So you'll save it, but you're not likely to use it. Once it gets to around, and it's going to depend on the run, you're going to get what's called the hearts. That's typically starts right 150 to 140 proof. The hearts is what you want. Now, the cleaner you can make that cut to the hearts, the more high quality of a product you're going to get. Now, you'll take that, and the United States, we got different types of whiskey. You've got single malt, you've got just whiskey, which could be anything. Bourbon, which has to be at least 51% corn, and it's got to be in a virgin new charred barrel. oak for at least 2 years. It's got to sit in there and undisturbed for 2 years. Rye, I don't remember the rules all for the rye, but they all have a little bit different rules. Whiskey,
Right.
if you just call it that, there is no rules. In the United States, a single malt, there are no rules. You could basically be whatever you want, so to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got these other thing called the tails. Tails, basically, you're going to keep a little bit of the tails to kind of go back with those heads, because that's going to help keep a consistent product. And the next time you do another batch, your product stays consistent over
Mm-hmm.
time by those things. Then, whenever
Right.
you're done, so it doesn't matter if you're making vodka, rum, gin, whiskey, water matters. And I didn't really know how much this mattered until learning about it. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
distillers, I will, they're doing what's best for their product, but I kind of go, what kind of product are you looking to make? Are you looking to make, when you're looking at the bar, top shelf, middle shelf, low? Where do you want to be? I feel like a
Right.
lot of them, because they're worried about the price, that they go with municipality water. So there's no real
Mm.
flavor to it. You're stripping everything
Right.
out. There's no minerals that
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a good mouth feel. So
Right.
the products that I've had that I think are amazing, they all use spring water from somewhere, typically local. But
Mm-hmm.
that's why
Yeah.
Kentucky bourbon, they're getting all that water right locally.
Yep.
It's natural
Yep.
water, and that water
Absolutely.
matters.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And they've been doing that for hundreds of years, long before they were ever trying to be legitimate. I mean, come on, let's face it, the moonshine industry has been going on for centuries, and it's been going on in that particular area, especially because of the fact that the water in most cases is so pure, and it creates a flavor. I know I haven't drank in a lot of years, but I remember when I used to drink alcohol, I was a whiskey bourbon type guy. I wasn't a real fan of beer, and I know that my dad used to travel a lot, and he used to. I don't know how he would find these people, but he'd wind up picking up moonshine from all these different areas. And I have had moonshine from Tennessee, from Alabama, from Arkansas, um, and the stuff that came out of Kentucky for some reason, and I had a couple different people that made it. It just always seemed to be so much smoother and much more flavorful than what some of this other stuff was. So the fact that you're talking about how much water actually matters in the finished product, I can totally get on board with that, because I believe that it's all because of the different minerals and stuff that's in the content of the water.
Absolutely. It's interesting. They'll give a. I just learned this, so this is really interesting to me. So Sazerac, which is also a a rye drink actually, but I found out the reason
Mm-hmm.
why they had to switch to rye, the family came from France and they were a cognac family. So Sazerac used to be
Okay.
cognac. I mean, it technically still is. And then sometime in the mid to late 1800s, France wanted to import a bunch of grapes. There was some bugs on it that came from the United States, and it killed all of the particular grapes that were in that area because there was no predators for it. So Sazerac's like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
what are we going to do? So they started making rye. And then eventually, like sometime in the early 1900s, they could start making cognac again. But I had no idea that Sazerac started off as a cognac company.
Wow, that's nuts. So let me ask you now. I know that just like anything else, it. I guess it really doesn't matter whether it's food or whiskey or hell beer or anything like that. Paying attention to the labels and what's in the product is huge, because in the case of whiskey and things of that nature, I'm sure it would it's going to affect the quality of the product. Whereas like with food, it's going to affect, different ingredients are going to affect one person's body different than another. So what are some of the things that we as consumers need to be looking out for when we go into our local liquor store or whatever to buy a good bottle of whiskey?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, and I brought some examples just because I happen to like to I do quite a bit, and so the first thing to look at, and hopefully people can see this. If not, then I'll send you the pictures so we can put in the cliff notes. So when you're looking at this label, I don't know if you can see that or not. Probably can't.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe
Rossville. Got
maybe
it.
a little bit. Yeah, so Rossville. Okay, so the first thing, there's a good angle. So the first thing to look at is, it doesn't say distillery on there anywhere. Well,
Yeah.
that should be a key indicator. The first thing that's, to me, that's a very big key indicator. Here's Redemption Rye. Now, mind you, I do like these products, but if it doesn't say distillery on there, the first thing you should be thinking about is this a brand of a larger conglomerate? So like Sazerac, was we were talking about earlier, they're the largest alcohol manufacturer in the United States. They've owned so many different brands, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you should go, is this a brand or is this being white labeled? And you'll easily be able to tell that because there's some labeling requirements. Somewhere on the bottle, it has to tell you where it was distilled and where it was bottled. So in this case, I don't know if we can really see here. Let's see if I can get a good angle. No, I think I got a better one. Okay, so you can see that right there. Yeah. So it's kind of hard with all of our lights, right? So Anyway, what it says on this label is distilled in the Indiana heartland, bottled by Redemption Barrel, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Well, nothing on the front says anything about that. Now, here's what's very interesting. Here's Rossville Union. It was distilled in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, bottled by Rossville Union. The difference in price between these two bottles is about $15. This one's cheaper. Same thing. It's
exact product.
Right. Now, here's a great one I just went and visited down in New Orleans. This is from 7-3. Now, I went there. I physically visited these folks, so I know that they're a distillery. Watch them make it. But here's the key part about it. They have that on there, the 7-3. That's their thing. When you go to the back, the name, again, you can't put distillery or distilling on the label if you're not doing it. It says right on the back, 7-3 Distilling Company, or 7-3 Distilling, bottled in New Orleans, distilled in New Orleans. So it is, and this is a great product. They've only been around for about 4 years out in New Orleans, but it's really, really good stuff. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with someone white labeling, but what are you buying? I mean, that's kind of the thing that I go to. You're just buying it from some big, huge, large conglomerate that's only just making product, and are you really getting what you thought you were getting? Now, if I'm going to make an old fashioned or a Manhattan or anything along this, I'm going to go with I'll go with this, $29 bottle of rye. No problem. Especially when, even though, it was so funny because my wife got me this book on all this stuff, which really started explaining it. And I'm going, oh my gosh, why did a Redemption Rye and why is this one and Russell's Reserve Rye, which I don't have a bottle of that, why do they all taste the same? Well, they are the same.
Same exact product. That's good. But that's just the world we live in today, Daniel. It's like so many things. Like I have a supplement company, and the fact of the matter is I don't manufacture the supplements. I have them manufactured for me. I'm not a manufacturer, but the difference between doing things the way I did them with the supplement company and some of these white label products you see out here is the company that manufactures my supplements. They literally manufacture hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of supplements. However, I only picked 22 of their products to start my company with. And the reason for that is it's the ingredients. I went through every product and I wanted to see what was in there because I wanted to make sure that I was selling the best product that I could sell to my customers. So, I mean, white labeling it's an accepted practice in today's society, in today's business world. But what winds up happening, and this is what gets me, and you just illustrated that point with those two different ryes that were manufactured in the same place, the price difference. Yeah. Where does one company get off charging more for a product that the other company has, and it's the exact same product, and the only thing that might be different is the shape of the bottle and the label? to
that's
me,
basically it. Yeah.
that to me, that just is, that's ripping off the consumer, the way I look at it.
Absolutely agreed. And there's a big difference. I go from just white label. So like when I was first investigating this business, like, all right, how quickly could I get product to market? And there is a fast way of
Mm-hmm.
doing it. I could go to like Indiana Whiskey Company, which is right around the corner from us, and I like their product. They do quite well. They would make a product for me, and I choose the
Mm-hmm.
recipe.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly fine. I'm
Mm-hmm.
100% good with it because I mean, there's a lot of places that's how you start off.
Right.
And I could have gotten quantity and brand recognition out there, and people who are professionals. The
Right.
cost was reasonable, but then I kind of went, at least for me, this was just for me because you're just basically turning sugar into alcohol. Probably a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more complicated than making supplements because then you got to go through different FDA labels and all those kind of
Yeah,
things.
the FDA doesn't control supplements, and that's the other reason I was so particular. There are 5 different products I have in my company right now that I asked the manufacturer to swap out some ingredients because I wasn't comfortable. A lot of the people that I work with are people that struggle with metabolizing carbs, whether they're either a diabetic or something else. And because of that, a lot of the supplement companies, they use rice flour as a binding agent. And I'm like, no, that doesn't work for my customers. It doesn't work for the people that I'm trying to market to. So we need to find another bonding agent. And what they actually wound up doing, they actually wound up using electrolytes, potassium, calcium, and sodium,
Oh,
to use those as a bonding agent, like the exogenous ketones that I sell. That's what bonds all that together. So they took out the rice flour, and now I have a product that doesn't affect people's blood sugar and actually helps them maintain energy. So it's all
nice.
about, I agree with what you're saying 100%. You know, anybody, we live in a world today where anybody can basically get a subscription to some of these white label companies and pay a monthly fee, and they get to pick out X amount of products to start their line with. Um, and I guess that's okay for somebody that is just trying to, like you said, get brand recognition and whatnot. But for someone that cares about the quality of what their customers are getting, that's not the way you want to go, because ultimately at the end of the day, if somebody else is manufacturing your product, you can't control the quality.
Absolutely, and that's a key part, which is why when talking with Indiana was, we couldn't be on the floor while they're distilling and going, yep, that's what we feel the heart cut is, right? That's the
Right.
key. We couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be relying on their taste, even though it's
Yep.
may have been our ingredient choice, and we didn't want to go that
Mm-hmm.
direction. And there's plenty of companies that do. And hey, only thing I wish is that it wasn't just like on the label. Be a little bit more honest about where it came from. That's kind of more I
Right.
would say in the alcohol business. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many different ways to do it. When I
Mm-hmm.
was originally looking for investors, I mean, one of my classmates from my MBA who invested,
Mm-hmm.
he invested because I told him how we were doing things. He goes, "Oh, I thought you were just going down a white label aspect. This is completely
Ah, yeah.
different." Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
how we came up with our recipes. Um, so while everyone was making bread during COVID, our bread was
Mm-hmm.
our different whiskey recipes that we were trying to come up with because it's the same ingredients for bread. So,
Yeah.
so how do we like this bread? Oh, we like this one a little bit
Yeah.
better than that, and that's how we wind
Mm-hmm.
up coming up with our different recipes for the product.
That's
Was we
neat.
made a bunch of bread.
Well, yeah, think about it. Rye bread, rye whiskey. The ingredients are probably pretty close, if not exact.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
and I think it all comes down to the fermentation process, doesn't it?
Yeah, in the beginning, absolutely, because there's different schools of thought. Like, so I was trained in that when I'm making for whiskey, I want to
Mm-hmm.
keep my alcohol content at like a regular beer less than 6%. Now,
Okay.
when I've talked to other distillers, some are like it just needs to be less than 10%, and then others are like, oh, it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be less than 15%. Now, what I've noticed in some of them is, and again, this is just my taste buds. If
Sure.
they started off with a higher alcohol content in the beginning, it needs to stay in the barrel longer. They're, because
Okay.
they're hoping it's going to cover some of the off flavors that are produced, because I mean, essentially, yeast is eating these sugars, and it's the byproduct, the waste
Mm-hmm.
is alcohol.
Right.
So
Yep.
there's some
Yep.
off flavors, and therefore they have to keep it in the barrel longer in order
Mm-hmm.
to get rid of some of those off flavors. Now that's just my taste buds. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's been kind of all over the map, but what I've noticed, at least consistency, is that if they start off less than 10%, I can't tell a difference, but I can tell a difference when they get close to that 15% when they start.
Right. Right. So
And
now,
you would only know that by doing tours. So there's
well,
distilleries all over
yeah,
the
I was
place.
gonna. That's what I was getting ready to ask you. I mean, did you spend a lot of time like touring distilleries and tasting different whiskeys and stuff like that as research?
Absolutely. And when we would go to these tours, I mean, the first thing, because I always feel like, hey, we're scheduling this tour, I want them to know up front, hey, we're starting a distillery. And if there's questions you don't want to answer, you're not going to offend me.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that I should not ask about? And I know some of the things,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, don't ask about their yeast. I don't want to know,
Right.
some are like, are very particular about even the quantities of things. And I get that because it's a recipe, perfectly
Yeah.
fine with it.
Trade
There are,
secrets. Trade
yeah,
secrets.
there are others that are like, this is 60% this and 40%. You still got
Mm-hmm.
to pick it. Not everyone picks a
Oh, sure.
cantaloupe the same way.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. For
Yeah.
sure.
And
Okay. I got one
and
final question for you.
yes, sir.
What 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 actually caused you and your wife to decide to open the distillery?
So, part of it was, as we were going through COVID,
Mm-hmm.
while a lot of others were going, oh, I can't wait to get out of the house. My wife and I said, how can we spend more time together? I mean, we actually, we enjoy each other's company, and even so much so that we're going to start this business. She
Mm-hmm.
is a design engineer for bridges, infrastructure. She does a lot of environmental impact studies. So, as an engineer by trade, this kind of fit into it, and we were trying to figure out, because I'm going in my mind, wait a minute, you love black coffee, big bold red
Mm-hmm.
wines, dark chocolate. You should like whiskey. Like, that's everything in that line goes, whiskey. So over the summer we started figuring out what kind of whiskeys does she like, and she tends to like Irish whiskey or Scotch, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more than, like, she's not a big fan of bourbon or rye. She likes those single malts, which is
Right.
basically Irish and Scotch. In
Mm-hmm.
the United States we just call it single malt. India, Japan, they just call them single malts, but that's basically what that is. So as part of that, we were going, well, we need to start somewhere. Like, we're hoping that we'll be an overnight success 20 years from now. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we're perfectly comfortable with that. But we decided to do this because, one, we wanted to kind of literally, make have everyone's spirits be high, and therefore make a good spirit.
Right.
And we want to
Mm-hmm.
be able to give back to the communities that we're making product in. Like, our stuff's in Indiana. Not that, hopefully it's nationwide at some point, but even still, we're going to give back to Indiana. Like, we're buying from local distributors. I started, and then we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be, we're not going to be in big box. Like, as long as I'm breathing, I'm not looking to support big box locations. When I looked at COVID, I went, wow, look at all of these chains that are just leaving the communities. Look at all these, big box stores just laying people off. Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read an article that they were closing 10,000 locations in North America. I'm going, wow.
Wow.
When we're at our lowest point as a nation, they're leaving. So I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, I will never, I don't want to support those. I want to support, like, the Mountaineer brand, which I bought a bunch of their stuff, and I got to tell you, I actually do love the head soap that doubles to be able to
Mm-hmm.
shave. It is so much easier to shave my head with that. Um,
Yes.
gave the beard wash. I bought the combo kit. I took the beard wash and I
Mm-hmm.
gave it to my stepson because he's got a beard closer to yours. I'm like, I don't need that, but here's this. Uh, and
Yeah.
so now we know, built-in Christmas gifts for him, for stocking stuff. So,
Right.
it's about supporting, independent business owners, and
Mm-hmm.
we can all lift up. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create something unique, and support, local. So when people come to Elkhart, Indiana, which, the people may not know this, but just about every RV in the United States is being made in Elkhart, Indiana. So,
Wow.
there's probably some brands that aren't, but there's a ton. And there's also a bunch of medical limbs that are made in Elkhart. So a lot of business travel.
Okay.
So we decided they're entrepreneurial. We're entrepreneurial. We'll figure out how to make this work.
Yeah, that's great. I've been podcasting now for almost 2 years with my own podcast and now with this one. And I've been very, very fortunate to talk to so many people that just want to, whether it's, due to their own experiences or just the people that they want to give back to humanity and, to their communities and stuff like that. And stuff like that always really hits home for me. I tell people all the time, my mission with what I do is I want to wipe out obesity and type 2 diabetes. Why? Because I know it can be done. Is it a lofty goal? Hell yeah, it is. But, anything worth doing, aim big. Aim big, because I look at it like this. If I aim that high and I hit somewhere in the middle, I've still made my mark on the world and I've still helped a lot of people. In your case, making a whiskey that you are putting your heart and soul in, okay, that is 100% yours. You're not going the white label route. You're absolutely right. They call it spirits for a reason, because it will lift your spirits. There are very few things that are more relaxing after a long week at work than sitting back with in some cases, people like to smoke cigars. So, you get a nice stogie, a nice glass of whiskey on the rocks, just sit back and unwind. And, I applaud the fact that not only are you making your product yours, but you are so focused on giving back to your community. I think that's really great.
Yeah, we're essentially taking off the top line revenue. It's roughly about 14% that we'll be donating back to the communities. Some of the stuff with education, some with veterans,
right,
some with ALS. I can't remember all the other ones that we've been talking about, but that's what we're dedicating,
right,
which is essentially $1 a bottle. But that $1, when you see it in the store,
adds up.
If it's at $40 that you're buying at a liquor store, that means likely, like myself, I would have sold it to distribution at probably $18 to $20. Because it's always a 3-tiered system. Sometimes there's 4.
Yeah.
So if I'm selling it at 18, well, it means it costs me about $6 maybe to make, depending on the product. So that's, that's basically $14 of revenue that I kind of get. And then $1 that's coming right off the top. Then we got to take all the rest of the expenses, but it's roughly.
Oh, sure.
It could be a little bit off. Someone can fact check, but the idea is that we want to make sure we're giving back to those communities.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you look at it like this. If your community supports you, you should support your community. And I've always believed that. Too many times I've lived all over the country, and too many times I've been in places where, like local politicians and things of that nature, they could care less about the community, other than getting their votes or whatever the case may be. And, to see people truly give back and be in a position where they don't have to, they choose to. That it's always an amazing sight. All right, my friend, let everybody know where they can find you on the internet if they want to reach out to you, whatever the case may be, whether they want to know more about Dragon's Mouth Distillery.
Yeah, so dragonsmouth.io is where the distillery's at. Website, I know I'm a tech guy, haven't really had a whole lot of time with that design, but dragonsmouth.io. I'm on Twitter, Nostradamus, where I host Echelon Orchid, my own podcast, which we go over a whole bunch of different topics, and LinkedIn, also LinkedIn whatever / Nostradamus. YouTube is Echelon Orchid on YouTube, but hit me up on any of those. I'll reply. I'm pretty good about replying. If you think I suck, hey, tell me why you think I suck. I'm perfectly fine with that too.
Absolutely. I'm like that too. I'm like, you think I suck? Okay. Tell me I suck. Tell me why I suck. I'll tell you. I have no problem telling you you're wrong, because I don't suck. I'm pretty great. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel, I don't want to take up.
You suck.
Yeah. Don't just say you suck. Don't just leave it at that. Tell me why, because who knows? Maybe I do suck in that one particular arena and I need some work on it. You know what I'm saying? Everything's open to interpretation. All right. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I look forward to, I don't, I haven't drank, let's see, in May, it will be 31 years since I've had a drink. And not that I was an alcoholic or anything, just because it was like, I was one of those people back then when I drank. Yeah, well, that, and I was one of those people that once I had a couple beers in me or whatever, then it was on. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I would drink to excess. So I decided once I became a father, I was like, okay, I need to kind of move away from that. But yeah, I'm looking forward. Maybe I'll take a trip down to Indiana when you get things up and running. Come and maybe Eric and I both. Eric likes a good whiskey, so maybe he and I will come down and check out the distillery and sample your wares, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.